Welcome everybody. So we're back with our third episode of Agency Uncut, and I'm here with my fellow presenters Paula Davies and 𝗕𝗃𝗄𝗏. Now, as promised last time, the first two times we did this, I think it was just an informal chat about what we were doing and what we were up to. But we want to dig deep now, and we want to go and dig into one of my biggest bugbears. These two are laughing because they know where this is going. It's property pricing on bandings. Drives me insane. So let me explain. Rightmove, Zoopla on the market, and probably every other property portal that your agent advertises on has bandings. Now let's use, say, 900 to a million, because that's obviously the end of the market that we operate in. If you put your house on the market at 999,999, all you're going to do is see the people that are looking between 900 and a million. If you put your house on the market at a million, you're going to see the people registering between 900 and a million and 1.1 million. So you double your exposure. Now, a lot of stats out there about this. I think Simon Gates put one on a little while ago and saying you get 16% more leads, but I think that's more in the lower end. I think in the top end, it probably doesn't resonate to that quantity. But I think what's really important, it's not so much the exposure of the people above, it's the fact that the people above are the buyers you want. And there's reasons behind that. So the reasons is that they've got more money. So obviously it becomes more in budget than people below. So if you're selling at 999,999, too many nines there, I think, and your client's got not your buyers, you as a buyer have got 950, 975, you're stretching yourself, is what I'm kind of trying to say. But if you're above there and you're appealing to people that A, got more money, B, they've got the money for stamp duty, and they've got more money to be able to play with if they need to do any work to it. So your buyer at a million is the buyers above, not the buyers below. Does that make sense? So my question is, why do agents keep doing it? What's the issue with them? Because it's not like Rightmove don't tell you. They're always doing stuff out there to help agents. I just don't know. Is it laziness? Is it lack of experience? Is it they think they're clever and they think they're selling a 10-year-old car? I don't get it. It just annoys me. And this will sound a bit like a rant, but I tell this story because it's the God's honest truth. It's that a couple of years ago when I worked somewhere else, I went to a house that was on the market with two local agents in South Liverpool, 𝗕𝗃𝗄𝗏 Village, and they were on at 799,999. And he'd had two viewings in 18 months. Went there and I said, you got 2 acres of land, which wasn't on the brochure anyway. I didn't even know he had the land until I got there. So that was one part. No drone, no aerial, no twilight, no video, just box standard crap marketing. But I said the biggest issue is, taking all that aside, is the banding. He said, well, I'm not going to reduce the price and I'm going to put it up. And he laughed. And we put it on at 800. We got 7 viewings, sold it for full asking price, completed in 6 weeks. And the buyer lived literally 4-minute walk round the corner, been looking for 18 months, but was registered between 800 and 900. And because there was no board outside, didn't even know it existed.
I think we've kind of finished the podcast there, Karl. I think
thanks so much.
Just says it all.
There's an example of it working. Yeah. I think it's taking it back to what you just said then about why are they still using it? To be honest, I think it's just force of habit. It's not being adaptable, is it? It's not changing. It's not being thinking about what's the best thing for the client and for the house. I think it's just a case of just doing what people have always done.
So when you say force of habit and what they've always done, do you mean pre the internet, pre-property report? We're talking old school agents that have been on the high street for 30 years and relying on what's in the window and maybe the old advert on a Thursday night in the newspaper. That we're talking about people that have done it for that long. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I think potentially just people have been doing it for a long time, and just stuck in the ways. At the same time as well, I think a lot of it can come down to who's in charge of the marketing. Is it the people in the branch, or have they got a big marketing department? And that marketing department used to sell cans of Coke for £1.99. You know, and it made sense then. But I think when it comes to property, especially when you're higher end of the market as well, I've seen one actually local to me, and I was laughing because I was thinking of yourself, Karl, because it's on at 999,999, and I'm thinking, so it's £1 off a million then.
But
You know,
then
it's
I've
just
just seen an agent reduce one from $1 million to offers in excess of 999,999.
it's probably the same house.
Is it in Lydia?
Yeah.
What
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, you put it at 999,999, but then you reduced it from $1 million. I mean, you just killed it.
You've just closed your half your audience.
Plus, it doesn't even with that small reduction, it doesn't even change it on Rightmove.
No.
So with some reductions, it makes sense because obviously that it changes completely where it appears on Rightmove, pulls us to the front page as like a new listing. Yeah. Whereas that doesn't do anything but negative.
Well, it just drops it down into a category where it's now got lost. And it's funny, isn't it? Because, you know, when I go out to see a property that's been on the market with another agent, and I would say predominantly most of what I used to do, not so much now, but when I first started, I used to go out and see a lot that was on with other agents, and I do a bit of digging, and I see they've dropped the price to a non-portal banding price, and I would say, I bet you had more viewings initially than you did when you dropped the price. To go, yeah, how'd you know? And you just lead into it and say, well, the reason is because this, and they kind of get really angry. Like, why's my agent done that? I'm like, well, I don't know. It's just lack of experience, and the knowledge is there because Rightmove do a lot of training, but I don't think people buy into it. I think they probably think, well, as you rightly say, I've done it for so long, I don't need to listen. But I just see this stuff, and I think
that's exactly what it does come down to. I think people have done, and not necessarily done the job for a long time, because I know people who haven't, who have been relatively new to the job, but they learn a certain way and almost close the door then to learning more. And I've explained this to people, and people have nodded at me and then still walked away and done it the way, not in accordance with the price bandings. And you think that people either get it or they don't get it. But to me, it's not something that you need to get. It's a clear fact. And in order to maximize what you do for your client, that's as much as you possibly can, and you have to have a really good reason not to do it. As the higher up the price bandings you go, the wider the price ranges are, and then it becomes more difficult to do.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I had this conversation. I've just been to see a house, and they've had 4 agents out there, and I'm going to see them again tomorrow, and they've already dismissed 2. It's a toss-up between me and another agent, which I kind of knew that when I went out, that they're a decent agent, and they've kind of valued it between the bandings. But the problem is, because it's over 2 million, it's either going to be really aggressive or stupidly expensive. So there are obviously always going to be anomalies at this end of the market. So that I get that it's difficult, but I think when you're in that 7, 8, 9 to 1.5 market, there's no excuse. There's no excuse.
We should simply never ever see 999.
No,
or 9.
Exactly. Even if it's, let's say the house comes on at 2.2 million, because it's between 2 million and 2.5. It's still not 99999. I mean, what are they? Jake said, what are they selling? A can of Coke.
Even if you're at the other end of the price range, you're at £100,000 market, you shouldn't see 99,999 ever. That should be gone completely. We are way beyond that as an advertising tool in the property market. Way beyond. Like you said, it's not cars, it's not a can of Coke. It's completely different, and that needs to go straight away.
I think it's the understanding as well, though, isn't it? With individual clients, that's a big difference with the way that we do things, and the way that a lot of other personal estate agents do it as well. It's not a case of this is one size fits all what we offer our client. We adapt to each individual client, each individual house, and the pricing points on it. It's not just a case of, oh well, this is what we've always done, and this is what we do with all our other properties. It's it's got to be property specific, hasn't it? So is the marketing, like we always say, and how you approach everything's going to be completely different. So the pricing points need to be done in a certain way that are going to benefit it, and know why they're going to benefit or why they won't benefit it. Not just do it because you have, and you always have done.
Here's a thought then. So when you get into like $1 million plus, pretty much, if you've got 10 properties between $1 million and $2 million as an agent, I would say they're all going to be different, aren't they? They're all different for whatever reason. I've got, 30, and I say, apart from the 2 in Acorn Gardens in 𝗕𝗶𝗵𝗆, which developers built, everything else is different. So when they're different, it makes it difficult to really know exactly what you're going to get. And as I say to everyone I got on a market appraisal, I'm going to give you a price, but this is a price that we're going to go to market. We think it's worth somewhere around there. I'm not an 𝗟𝗆𝗀 surveyor. I'm not a lender. At the end of the day, I'm just a person that's going to do the best marketing you're ever going to get people through the door. But ultimately, the market will dictate. So I'm going to give you a price that gets people through the door. But what the price you get is, we don't know until it happens. I wonder what would happen if Rightmove and then changed it. Anything above $1 million, you had to put it on their bandings. So you had to choose the banding price.
Yeah, potentially.
I mean, you know, above 2 million, they couldn't do 2 to 2.5. They probably have to go 2 to 2.50 or 2 to, you know, whatever. Just reduce them above as they get higher, because they do get really, you know, really high. But I'm just wondering if that would make a significant difference to stock that didn't sell. Just suddenly popped inside my head. I mean, I'm not going to be able to. I'm certainly not going to write to Rightmove and tell them to do it, because they never respond. But I'm just thinking, I wonder, of all the property that, you know, comes off the market because it doesn't sell, it's not all about the agent's done a crap job. It could be that the market is absolutely insane. It's just been aligned in the wrong banding. You know, and we've all proven that. I mean, you know, you've taken stuff back on, Jake, and sold it for the same price because you've done a really good job with it. But often agents, the first thing they do is get the price down. But what I'm saying is, if Rightmove said, right, over $1 million or over 750 or whatever, 800, it's got to be on our bandings, I bet more property would sell.
I agree, for sure.
I think in the higher end of the market, mid to higher end, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, just saying it would get more exposure, wouldn't it?
Well, that's the whole point, isn't it?
The bandings become so wide, the higher up the price bracket you go, that there's times when you just can't sit on them, because the difference is £500,000. You know, you can't go one side or the other. You do have to sit in the middle. So you are limiting your exposure. Yeah, I can imagine you would sell more.
But again,
generate more interest.
Again, it's being sensible with the marketing. You know, I keep an eye on most agents in the area, and I've just seen a house that popped up on the market. So when something new comes on, it looks a bit fruity, I always look at Rightmove Plus and see if it's been on before. And this house had been on before it, a couple of million before, 3 or 4 times, and it's now gone back on with 2 agents, and it's gone on at 5.5 million. And I'm thinking, you know, you're going to get 5 million for that house. Probably that's where your offers are going to be. So why not put it offers in excess of 5 million? Because at 5.5, you're going to get the same price. You're just going to get it a lot quicker, and you're probably got a guarantee you're going to get it. I just don't understand it. And these are 2 seasoned premium agencies that really should know better. So, you know, they're being driven by the owner, or they just, you know, not able to say this is what you should be doing.
I wonder if there's a strategy behind it. Like we say, you know, obviously we do it for a reason, maybe, but for the reason that we know does have success. Is there maybe some sort of strategic reason as to why they've done it in these circumstances? But I suppose we'll never know, will we? And what we do know is that a lot of the time it hasn't got results.
I can't see what strategy there would be unless their strategy is not to sell houses, which I don't think it would be. But you know, when you look at things and think, where's the logic behind things? I don't see the logic behind that. You know, maybe it's because it's been driven by the owner. I don't honestly think that you could go out to a house at 5.5 million and say, your house, Mr. Smith, is worth £5.5 million.
And it's been on before, Karl.
Twice, maybe even 3 times. I think it started about 7.
Okay. So we're at a different price now.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but we're at a price that is probably not doing anything, because it's probably being seen by the same people. You know, I don't know I'd have to look at it, but above 5 million, does it not go 5 to 7.5, 7.5 to 10, 10 to 15, and then 15 to affinity? I think that's what it does, doesn't it? I'm sure.
What would be interesting there would be to look at those agents who have listed it and to see if those agents work within the parameters of the bandings or not. So is that something that they've taken into the property and discussed with the seller or not? Is that how they...
Oh, no, they've got 1.695, 1950. It's like they just pick a figure. But that's not a strategy. That's not a marketing plan.
No,
that's just a... I had this conversation with another agent this morning, saying we were doing this, and he said, do you think they're just weak and they're being led by the owners?
Potentially, yeah. But there's a good chance, isn't there?
Yeah.
I would say
that's not doing the right job, though, is it?
No, but they're probably an agent that don't use the bandings as a tool.
Or they're probably an agent that isn't self-employed like us, not spending their own money like us, and it's just a KPI. You know, I work for a corporate, you work for a corporate, Jake. Have you worked for a corporate, Paula? No. You know, at the end of the day, you know, you have a listings target, don't you? You have a mortgage referrals target. You have targets of everything. You know, so that agent goes out and says, how much do you want for it, Mrs. Smith? And he says, 5.5 million. You go, okay, thank you very much. Sign them up and move on. You're not going to say, well, actually, I don't really want to list it at that price. I think you should be doing this and take the chance of losing it. Because at the end of the day, he goes back. The manager says, why didn't you get it on? And, you know, the rest is history. So, yeah.
That's exactly it, Karl. I think that's exactly it. You know, if a value was going out knowing that they're going to a high value property, you know, there's already a buzz about going to that in the first place. Then what they want to do is come back with that instruction. And that's the aim, is to come back with that instruction. Our aim is to sell it, is to give a marketing strategy, to give a pricing strategy, and to sell the property.
I saw a really good video on Facebook by Ryan Serhant. Don't know if anybody watches Ryan, you know, from his days of $1 million listing. And he was out with an appraisal and it was filmed, and he said to the owner, you know, I don't need to take your house on to the market. I want to take your house on the market. I don't need to sell it. I want to sell it. And there's a difference. I'm not here to stock listings. I'm not here to make my Instagram and Facebook and your website look fantastic with these luxury properties. I'm here to get them sold. And I think that's the problem, isn't it? Is that when agents go out to premium listings, they become trophies.
Yeah.
You know, we were laughing about that one the day that we all saw at 3.5 million. Like, okay. And I think, again, that's, you know, I reached out to a local agent I know in the area. He said, God, that's like 2 million more than I thought it was worth. You know, but again, that's probably been driven by the owner. But you're not doing them any favours.
No.
I think one thing I've always said is, when I go out to appointments, is I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear and tell you what you need to hear. You know, and that's a big difference. Is that it's sort of, a lot of the time they'll say, if you said how much you were expecting for the property, did they say, you're exactly right? You know, sort of that's not a reason why I got to this valuation. It's just, yeah, you're right. You know, that is the number. Let's put it on at that. Whether that is high or low, it's just more a case of we'll just get it on. You know, get more likely to get a contract signed if the seller thinks that I agree on the pricing point. When really it's a case of the why. We circling back to the first podcast that we've done. We said, like, why do we want to sell people's properties? Why should we price it in this way? What's the best way to get the result that you want? That's the difference, I think, isn't it? Rather than just going, do you know what? Yeah, you want that? Let's put on at that.
Yeah, which I think most agents will do.
And still happens, very much still happens.
Yeah. Well, I think it does. I mean, you know, we can think in future podcasts, we'll probably talk about staging. I mean, that one that you sent me, I was laughing about. I still watch that. That one was it just a chair appear in the room? I mean, did you not see it on the WhatsApp group? Jake was laughing his head off.
Yeah, he had a fan. Just had a fan in there and stuff.
That was their virtual staging, a chair and a fan, wasn't it? But yeah. But no, I'm digressing.
Or maybe your car, Karl. Remember the car that went in front of the property for your virtual staging?
Oh yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah. God, yeah, that was very funny. But no, so I think that, you know, the takeaway from this is that probably owners need to be a little bit more savvy when they're listing the property. You know, I think, you know, going back to the premium market, you know, I don't know whether when you go to see an owner and they go, I've got no idea what it's worth. Does anybody not have an idea what the house is worth? Their biggest asset? Everybody probably got a little bit of a rough idea. What do you think?
I think everyone's got a pretty good idea. I think I know that corporate estate agency a long time ago. To be fair, it might be the same now. They say, do not, whatever you do, ask the seller what they want for it, because it implies that you don't know what you're doing, sort of thing. But I think when you've been doing it a long time, like obviously you guys and obviously myself as well, is we've already done all the research and where we think the value lands before we get there. So when we ask that, if we do ask that question, sort of, have you got an idea of what you were hoping to achieve or anything like that? It's not a case of us trying to trick you up. It's genuinely just asking because we've already got our decision anyway and what we think it is worth, and that's not going to change. But it'd be interesting to know where the client might lie, because a lot. I mean, everyone knows it's become very, very easy to get an idea on your mortgage or through Zoopla and things like that of where it fits. Now, sometimes they're way off, and sometimes they're quite close. But got an idea, haven't they?
I think the problem with the Zoopla price guide is that obviously it doesn't take consideration what's been done or not been done to the property. It obviously works on inflation, but they could have had a 2-story extension stack on the back of a swimming pool. They won't turn that into consideration. I use obviously one of the software packages that we all use, and I always look at the price estimate. And I think it's probably what I think. And sometimes I look and think, God, that's about £1 million off, because it could have been knocked down and rebuilt. So there's too many parameters in that to look at that. And I think that you've got to go by, as you say, experience and what's been sold. And I have that same conversation with people when I go out, and they go, yeah, but my neighbour's on the road at 2 million. I go, yeah, but he's not sold it. If you want to look at stats, you look at what's traded. That's the only stat that matters, is what's sold and completed. That's the market, not what's on the market, not what's been on the market, not what your neighbour wanted to sell it for. It's what's sold. So I think that going back to it again, I think owners probably, if they've got a rough idea of what they think their house is worth, they probably need to do a bit of research on Zoopla, on Rightmove, or on the market, and see what band they are in. And they probably need to be firm with the agent. I mean, they shouldn't have to do this. They shouldn't have to tell the agent what they need to do to market their house correctly. But I think that what we're trying to do with these podcasts is add value to people and say, take our advice. We know what we're doing.
Yeah, I think a big thing I'd say take away as well, especially for customers, or if you're thinking about putting your property on the market, is ask why. Like that's I've always said that's the biggest question, is why? Why are we going to price it there? Or why is that the price? Or why should we do this? Why should we market in this way? It's not a case of this is what we're going to do. It's why are you doing it in that way? What's the desired results? What good impact it's going to have?
Definitely. And that brings on to another point. Is I went to when I go to evaluation or market appraisal, whatever you want to call it, that's been on the market with another agent. I always look at what they've done and the history of that property and what value I can add. Because I always say to people when I go out, if I genuinely think that your agent is doing an absolutely fantastic job, then I'm not going to want you to change. Because I always say to owners that are on the market, their agents, if you change agents, you're saying to the market you've had no interest. You fell out with your agent wasn't very good. You are unhappy with what they've done. You're moving on. If you remain on the market with that current agent, or you reduce the price slightly, you're sort of saying, well, we've had a bit of interest, but we've had to bring the price down, or we've had some interest, but they might have a house to sell or whatever. But by changing, you're basically saying to the market, you've had no interest. So you've got to make it worthwhile to change. So A, you've got to find an agent that brings something different to the party, and B, they've got to be confident that if it's not just a price change, they're going to do something different. So I went to evaluation not long ago, and he was on the market with an agent I wasn't familiar with. Went out there, did some backstory on the brochure they had online. Fantastic video. The girl that did the video unfortunately left, which, I mean, that's not a killer. But I went to see the owner, and the owner said, what do you think? Having walked around, I said, I think your marketing's brilliant. Honestly, I think it's fantastic. I don't think I can do anything different, but I would suggest one thing on the price, and this goes back to the bandings. I would do this. And he did it and sold it within 10 days and sent me a really nice message and said, look, if I ever sell anything else again, I'll definitely come to you. So I think that, these videos are about adding value, and they're also about doing the right thing for owners.
I was just about to say the same thing. I've just recently done that with a seller. So they were on with another agent, and it's just outside my area. So I say it's just outside. I probably would have considered bringing it on, but I want to make sure I only take on so many. Don't get too busy that I can't look after my current clients. They're currently on the market, and they're on at 415. And it's banding again. That's what we're talking about. But I've said to them, they said, what were you wanting for it? And they said, well, we want a 425 really, but we'd be happy with 400 now. And I said, well, pick one. Either go on the 425 or 400, but the 415 isn't great at the minute. Even if they go up in price, that it doesn't matter. Just do it. And they did. They went up to 425, and it sold. And they literally get message saying that same agent. So thank you for helping our agents out. But it is just those slight tweaks, isn't it?
Yeah. It's funny, I had a couple that went to see a couple of years ago. Someone was a different agent, and they weren't a luxury agent like we are. And you know, they were like me. They'd seen a house. They had 2 houses to sell, and one of them they wanted 450 for, beautiful Victorian semi. And I said, you're not getting 450 for it. I said it's probably worth 410, 415, that sort of lower fours. So he said, try it at 450. We had 2 viewings, put it on it. So we dropped it to 425, 2 more viewings. And I found a house in Birkdale, want to buy. What did you do? I said, just go back to what I said, offers in excess of 400, 14 viewings on the Saturday. And the woman that viewed it at 450 came back and bought it and paid 427 for it because we had a bidding war.
Yeah.
I think the problem is when you do aggressive offers in excess on the bandings, the owner often say to you, well, I never pay that. I never pay any more, but you're not buying it. You're looking at it differently. If there's 20 people looking at it and you know that 2 or 3 other people are interested, you know you've got to come up. So, but I think it's just explain that to the owners, isn't it?
It's using the bandings within your pricing strategy, isn't it? So I think, you know, something to take from is that, you know, if you're selling a property, you know, ask your agent, what is my pricing strategy? You know, you're pricing it at this price, why? And provide me with, along with the marketing strategy, provide me with a pricing strategy.
Definitely.
They're very clear then for a seller when they're moving forwards.
Definitely. Yeah, good. Well, I think we've covered that. So what sort of week have you had, or fortnight? How's it been?
Okay, I'm putting a house on a 39999.
See it?
I know, yeah.
Where are you right now?
Funny, no.
Have you had much interest in that detached one by the apartment you sold?
Yes, but I have had a couple of viewings on it, to be fair. Quite a few viewings. It's a lovely property. I think it's in a pricing band where it's a lot of the people are people who are selling, so it's a case of them having to sell first, which is just one of those things, isn't it? I suppose. But yeah, it's a family home, so it's one of those people who are selling their property to upsize into a bigger family home, really. But no, it's really nice. I just had a pre-market viewing this morning on a property which is not gone live yet, and that's just sold, literally offered on the day, and that's sold as well now. So yeah, not a bad start to end of the month.
Yeah, definitely. That happened to me. So I went to a house that had been on with 3 other agents on the market for 3 years. It had recently been put on the market with Fine & Country at 1.985, and I'm like, well, why have you done that? And he said I dropped it when the budget went out for the mansion tax under 2 million, and the agent said it was the right thing to do. I said, well, it wasn't. So we put it back up to 2 million, did a coming soon video on Instagram. Somebody that I know who's in the market sent me a semi-sarcastic message like, you put the price up, never going to sell, and of course it's sold now and under offer, and we're all happy. So, you know, bandings win again.
They do. And
how about you, Paula? How are you getting on? You've had a bit photos this morning, yeah?
Yeah, so I've just done photos this morning, and just before I've jumped on here, I've just arranged a pre-market viewing for somebody for that property, which will be tomorrow. So I think
we should go on to pre-market stuff. It's a little bit like off-market stuff, isn't it? I mean, I've sold some big off-market stuff over the years, and I think that's something else we'll pick up on another podcast. But I think it's going to take longer than a few minutes, because I think that I've just put together a letter to go to for the podcast. It's interesting, some stats out there. I think in 22 to 24, something like 21% of the market, over 1 million, sold off market. I mean, that's obviously very good agents being creative. But I think the one thing that I picked up on it, and I see this on LinkedIn, people get into it. We're all not LinkedIn's like, and an agent said a couple of weeks ago, I mean, you know, there's no such thing as off market. It's either on the market or it's not on the market. You know, it's just a different way of marketing. And I'm like, well, it doesn't work that way. But if you take a property and you offer it to somebody off market, the chances are you will get more money for it, because they don't want it to go on market and take the chance. So it's a good way of marketing stuff. It really is. But you've got to have the ability to do that. And there's different variations about how you do that. So I think we'll do that on another podcast.
Yeah, agree. I think
Next
so. The
week,
one from this morning was sold $5,000 over asking price, over the pre-market asking price,
Wow.
which is obviously great. But yeah, I think it's just knowing your buyers, knowing your sellers, which is something the sellers and buyers have actually said to me today. He said, we've been looking since January, the buyer, and you found the exact sort of house we were looking for. And the seller said, we need this type of buyer. And it was just a perfect piece up.
Timing.
Perfect.
Good. Right. Good to see you both. We will catch up again in 2 weeks. Take care.
It's
Bye.
June.
Bye.
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 Bye.